My name is Uche Njoku, and I am a public school principal, a photography enthusiast, a father, a man of color, a black man of Nigerian descent, and I own a Leica. And why do I have to start the video in that way? It has to do with the fact that a post that I posted a few weeks ago now, maybe about a month or two ago, kind of went a little cuckoo. You know, I was sharing the fact that I noticed something that was unfamiliar to me, and that had to do with the fact that more than any other camera that I've ever owned or wielded, this one in particular garners the most attention. If it's people just saying, "Hey, that's a cool camera. How old is it? How old is it?" But they see the front facade of it, flat, pretty thin, and it looks very much like a film camera because they only get to see it from this direction. They don't get to see it from back here, which then they would understand and see there's a digital camera. The lens also gives it a sense of something older because all the manual settings on this lens you don't get to see in more modern lenses. Everything is built into the camera. It's autofocus and kind of speaks into the camera. So everything's built into the lens, then speaks into the camera. You can literally touch buttons and it will shift everything for you and you get what you want. So people are used to that. So when they see this, they question it. They're asking themselves, what is that? But then because I'm not in video and film production per se, but I do run a school which has that theme. So when people come to my school and they are in the field of film production and photography, or I go to an event in which I usually carry my cameras with me. I usually carry either my Fuji X-T5 or I carry this, the Leica M11P. And when I'm in those spaces, people definitely do bat an eye when they see me with my camera, just like I do. When I see people with cameras, I can't help but be like, what is that? Wait a minute, is that a Sony? Is that a Nikon? A Nikon? Or is that a Canon? Or is that a Leica? And because I know I do it, I'm sure. I mean, what less would I expect from other people to do the same thing to me if they are into photography, or even video production goes hand in hand. But what's interesting is that this camera, more so than any other camera, even about a month or two after that first original post in which I asked the question, why don't more black photographers have Canons? I'm sorry, I said Canon, I'm sorry. They all have Canons. Why don't they have Leicas? And it had to do with the fact that my personal noticings of how I was being spoken to, looked upon, and treated because I had this camera. And not just by people who were not black, but also from people who were black. So black folk who were into videography and photography and this digital space would see my camera and be like, whoa. And then, of course, I would get the same thing from everyone. But however, in the spaces that I walk into and I notice people's cameras, I would tend to see, or at least tend to notice that I would be the only black person that had a Leica. And I know some of you in your posts in response to my video said, come to California, come to LA, in New York, there's these groups here and there. But you're speaking as though these groups are so prevalent and they're just everywhere. Look out your window, you're going to see them. That is not the truth. Just like I recognize the fact that, I tend to be a one of one in many spaces. Have I ever met somebody who's a black person who owns a Leica? Yes, I have. At least they told me they did, and they tended to be older, and tended to really be photography enthusiasts, and would tell me stories about when they first got their first Leica, how it was a film camera, and all the things they appreciated about that tool in developing their abilities as photographers. And again, a rarity to find these people who look like me. My question had less to do with calling people out as racists, because I never said that. It had a lot to do with understanding the economics of owning something, such as a Leica camera. The same thing could be said about houses and cars, what neighborhoods you live in, clothing, and whatever it is that you choose to purchase or you might want, whether you can afford it or not afford it. What I didn't respect was those people who immediately made it about race. In particular, made it about racism. Because again, if it's about race, numbers are numbers, facts are facts. But the whole notion about it being racist, and I remember somebody actually posting that that black people are too busy buying jewelry and shoes. And I was like, that's interesting. So because of your choice in jewelry or your shoes, that has something to do with your inability to own a Leica? But the other thing too is my question also had to do with the fact that I wonder what the spatial awareness of things may be, or how things are being depicted could be from various lenses. Because I follow a lot of people who create content on YouTube and photographers, and I've noticed how the way certain photographers in Europe, how they wield and what they capture, looks a little bit different from those who might be in New York or Los Angeles, or those who are transplants from Japan who are in San Francisco, and how they wield their camera and how they see the world is a little bit different. My issue, it's not even an issue, it's just a question, was why weren't there more photographers that were African or Caribbean or black photographers, and it had nothing to do with, the ability to purchase, not purchase, because I know there's a lot of people who are of color who look like me who are very wealthy and able to afford things like this. My question was more along the lines of what would their work look like, because I don't get to see that. Had nothing to do with race, had nothing to do with racism, had everything to do with the curiosity of what the lens captures with an eye of someone that has common experiences as me. That's all it was. Because I know what I capture and what it looks like is very different from what most people may look for. After a while, you start to see patterns between certain types of photographers and where they're from and what their exposure is to the world. And I just wondered, again, why aren't there more photographers of color, black photographers, whether they're African, African American, Caribbean? Because I just wonder how cool it would be to see how they use something like this, the rangefinder, without the automaticity. I think I just made up a word. Without the automatic function of just pressing autofocus and capturing versus taking your time to look for something in particular and trying to capture it before it's gone. That was all I was asking. So for those of you who lost your mind and were like, oh my God, race, why are we talking about race? You're the one talking about race. You made it about race. And with that, I'll talk to you next time. Be well.